gratitude to the African Union Commission for prioritizing this theme of the year, and I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate the African Union Chairperson, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, for his exemplary leadership throughout his tenure. We thank you very much. I also salute the heads of state and government who have committed to launching the 2025 theme in their respective countries, demonstrating their collective resolve to secure justice for Africa and its diaspora. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we cannot contest the fact that the transatlantic slave trade and colonial exploitation robbed Africa of its people, resources, and dignity, and left behind inequalities that persist in global financial systems, trade structures, and governance institutions till this day. The extraction of Africa's resources without corresponding development, the undervaluation of the African economies in global credit assessments, and the systemic barriers to trade and investment are indeed contemporary manifestations of the historical injustices. It is therefore crucial that these beyond financial compensation must be addressed as part of our conversation on reparative justice. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Africa's current global financial standing reveals the stark inequalities it faces. The continent possesses 30% of the world's mineral reserves, including 40% of the gold and up to 90% of its chromium and platinum. It also contains as much as 65% of the world's arable land, yet Africa accounts for less than 3% of global trade and only 1% of global manufacturing output. Furthermore, in 2023, for example, intra-African trade stood at just 16% compared to the intra-European trade at 68%. Moreover, it is unjust that the entire African continent has an IMF shareholding equal to one of a single country, Germany. These disparities are not just due to lack of economic potential, but to entrenched structural barriers that keep Africa in a cycle of economic dependency. Distinguished delegates, in addition to this, the injustice extends to Africa's credit ratings, which are dominated by external agencies that sometimes apply unfair and subjective assessments to African economies. As we speak, only 2 countries, Botswana and Mauritius, hold investment-grade ratings, while others, despite sound economic fundamentals, are burdened with high-risk levels. This situation inflames borrowing costs, stifles investment, and keeps African economies locked in debt cycles. Added to these economic disparities is the fact that although Africa contributed the least to climate change, it is suffering the most from its effects. Currently, climate change is costing Africa up to 5% of GDP. Yet, of the $10 trillion invested in globally in clean energy between 2015 and 2022, Africa received only 2%. However, this must change. Africa cannot build prosperity on a foundation designed to constrain its growth. To translate this call for justice into tangible outcomes, I propose 5 key areas of focus. First, the current global financial architecture is outdated, inequitable, and unjust, and must be reformed to be fit for purpose. We must advocate for debt restructuring that allows African nations to invest in their people and development instead of paying exorbitant interest rates. A just world requires governance reforms in international financial institutions to ensure that Africa has a strong voice in shaping global economic policies. Also, it is imperative to establish an African-led credit rating agency to ensure fair assessments reflect Africa's true economic realities rather than outdated risk perceptions. Second, the African Continental Free Trade Area is a game changer. With a market of 1.5 billion people and a combined GDP of over $3 trillion, it presents unparalleled opportunity to boost industrialization and trade within the continent. It is therefore essential to fully harness the CFTA's potential to accelerate investments in infrastructure and manufacturing to reduce dependency on external markets. It is also paramount that we develop regional value chains to ensure that Africa produces and processes its own raw materials and creates jobs and industries that benefit Africans. Third, we must prioritize in-continent value addition on Africa's vast mineral wealth. For centuries, Africa's wealth has fueled the prosperity of others while its own people remain impoverished. This must end. Africa's resources must benefit Africans first, rather than being exported in raw form and re-imported at a very high cost. True reparative justice means that Africa's resources must work for Africa. Fourth, we must recognize that Africa's strength extends beyond its borders. In this regard, the African diaspora, which is connected to the continent through historical injustices, must be a key partner in our development. To this end, we must foster economic and cultural partnerships with the diaspora through investment platforms and heritage initiatives, such as the establishment of scholarships programs for descendants of enslaved Africans to reconnect with and contribute to Africa's development. Furthermore, we must reclaim our identity and history by demanding the restitution of stolen African artifacts and cultural heritage. Finally, the forced movement of our ancestors centuries ago must now be countered with the freedom of mobility. We must accelerate the African integration because a fragmented Africa can never reach its full potential. This requires that we implement the Africa Protocol on free movement of persons to facilitate trade, knowledge transfer, and cultural unity, and strengthen regional economic cooperation to enhance resilience and shared prosperity. Excellencies, the injustice of the past must no longer define Africa's future. We have the tools, the resources, and the will to reclaim Africa's agency. And the ECA remains steadfast in our commitment to work with you and bridge the gap between Africa and the diaspora, reclaim our economic sovereignty, and secure a future where all Africans can live with dignity and prosperity. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your commitment towards promoting economic and social development in Africa. It is now my distinct honor to invite His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Salim Weld Marzouk, Minister of Foreign Affairs, African Cooperation and Mauritanians Abroad, Chairperson of the African Union Executive Council, to deliver his statement. Your Excellency.
In the name of Allah, and praise be given unto His Messenger. Excellencies, members of the Executive Council of the African Union, my learned and esteemed President of the African Union, Mr. Gatete, Excellencies, Honorable Permanent Representatives, Ambassadors, and members of the Diplomatic Corps, as well as representatives of member states, the Right Honorable Directors within the bodies of the African Union, ladies and gentlemen, may I, at the outset, extend my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of you all to the people and government of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia for the very warm hospitality and kind welcome that was extended unto us ever since we set foot in this beautiful land. So I also wish to commend the performance of the Honorable Musabake Mohammed, who is the President of the African Commission, as well as the members of the Commission who have attended the most recent edition of the Executive Council for their for their excellent execution of the mandate as conferred by our union, which should actually turn into an instrument to serve the ambitions and aspirations of our continent in a spirit of complementarity and prosperity. So, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today we convene after 1 year since I was given the mandate to chair this council, as we are now about to give the gavel to brotherly Angola, so as for it to continue to serve the interests of our dear continent. At the time, you would actually assume the presidency of the Executive Council for a year ago. The world was already extended or exposed to a crisis. The war in Ukraine, the unspeakable war in Gaza, as well as the conflicts and strife that our continent suffers from. Our world was actually fractured and is shaken in its own fundamentals ever since the consensus reached in 1945. There are three riptides that destroy and deconstruct our environment every day. As you do have Professor Salame, has Kassam Salame, who actually spoke of resorting to force, not uh, because one respects those principles, but simply they are being jeopardized. And the second type of riptide that we are we have questions with regard to the uh, functioning of the Peace and Security Council, which is actually supposed to ensure and guarantee the fundamentals for peace. And even through the charter of the Union, I would say that this is not a recent development, but it dates back actually to the early 2000, early in the beginning of this millennium. And as my country has witnessed, we can see actually that this year was the year of many challenges that brought about aspiration and hopes. And we have had many achievements, constructive achievements. And throughout this year, we, with great resolve, made sure that the voice of Africa be heard in international fora and to strengthen our global partnership and also our commitment to reform our union. We convened an extraordinary meeting of our executive council in March of last year, where we had actually to adopt the new uh, principles that will direct our execution of those resolutions adopted by our executive council during the 12th session of that was held with regard to alternation as well as to the reform uh, of the five regions that we have within our union. At the time, resolutions were made with regard to uh, the execution of this mandate as well as defining the positions and also conduct elections on the basis of regional uh, of our regions with regard to the position of chair and vice chair, and also for representatives and delegates to be appointed. And now we are actually reaping the fruit of such efforts by holding very clear elections so as to elect a new leadership for our commission. On in November of last year, we also convened an extraordinary meeting in order to address other issues that were without solutions so as to assess the competences within the African Union or the SACA uh, operation. And this uh, meeting has actually led to the constitution of a restricted uh, committee that is to ensure that this mandate be dispatched and also be executed further to the resolutions that were made by member states so as for the commission to uh, have to strengthen its performance. Very soon you will be given a report once the committee actually puts the finishing touches on this document. So, ladies and gentlemen, the activity of our executive council was very uh, sustained throughout last year, and through the Nairobi delegation, we actually held a meeting for ministers of agriculture, and also during our ordinary meeting in Accra, and also to take part in the extraordinary summit in Kampala with regard to the agricultural reform program. And we did, throughout these meetings, adopt a series of resolutions in order to ensure food security and also to build agricultural capacity and reduce the impact of famine or hunger in Africa in the present or in the future. And we have also worked in earnest on implementing the Peace Fund and made sure that the African Union would be able to take effectively part in the G20. And there are also a series of other important resolutions that were made in various areas that should serve our union in line with Agenda 2063. So, in this regard, we had to strengthen our relations with our international partners and therefore defend the interest of our continent in international and global fora. And these were most of the efforts that were engaged throughout last year. We had the ministerial meeting of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD, within the Japanese capital, the city of Tokyo. And that session allowed us actually to assess cooperation from year 2021 until 2024 and also prepare the ninth summit for this very important partnership, which is to be convened in the city of Yokohama in Japan. The also African Turkish conference in Djibouti that was held in November in last year, whereby we reviewed and assessed of the strategy, our joint strategy for the years of 2021 until 2026, as adopted by the African Turkish Summit, which was held previously. We also had the first session of the Russian African conference that was held in November of last year in the city of Sochi. The meeting of ministers of foreign affairs of Africa with Scandinavian nations, their counterparts from Scandinavian nations, along with members of the G20 in the margin of the ordinary General Assembly of the United Nations. And we were keen throughout such meetings and numerous conferences that were held at various levels. We were keen on strengthening and building our relations with our development partners so as to for the continent to greatly benefit from such partnerships. And I would say that in this regard, I did take part in your name in a number of roundtables as well as meetings on the issue of migration, climate change, and others. And I have met with uh, dozens of ministers of foreign affairs from the entire world, and I have always tabled the African the challenges being faced by Africa with regard to climate change in Africa, and also how to address the issue of migration and to reform the international or the United Nations Security Council as well as the World Trade Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, we have during this period made very important strides in our effort to strengthen our African Union through resolutions that would be serving the interest of our peoples and achieve security and development in all areas. Today, we are assuming a major responsibility so as to continue down this path and also to work on strengthening the principles of cooperation and complementarity, which actually represents the essence of our aspirations. And in align and consistent with these, we have actually convened today's session, and which will be also uh, where we'll see very important elections. And in this regard, I would invite you all to please ensure that the elections are held uh, with a spirit of African cooperation and brotherhood. And we would like also for these resolutions to make this organization a platform for cooperation and mutual assistance, and also to achieve the aspirations and ambitions of our African peoples in terms of union and also in prosperity. I wish to close my statement by insisting on some elements that were inspired by my modest experience within this council. We, in the beginning of our statement, we actually spoke to global evolution, which is actually quite concerning and full of uncertainty, but at the same time, it does actually uh, invite us to choose the best for us and to continue make efforts in this regard. So we should learn from the current uncertainty a lesson that should be a permanent concern for us. The only alternative we have is to strengthen our organization, our continental organization, which should be the only place where we should have the blossoming of all our projects, be they political or otherwise. There is a new polarity being developed, and it should be actually quite efficient. However, there is little room for fragmentation and atomization. So we today, as tomorrow, we are demanded to show greater integration and solidarity and mutual responsibility. This is the temple of our strength. This very room, regardless of the scenario, the only useful organization for us is the African Union. Africa will never be strong should this assembly not address all of the ideas that were championed by the founding fathers, and we have the responsibility to turn them into reality. So we should seek the most effective ways to continue to uh, work on convergence, because this is what the matter consists in. We need to work on developing the wake of convergence, as Mr. Musa had said, and we should do so while respecting the letter of our text. We need to work on this harmony that should serve as the source of our strength. Time is short, and we have to make advances at the pace that will allow us to bridge as soon as possible the gaps that we have with others. So, unity, solidarity, and wisdom must be the true levers for all of our efforts here. And this is also what is at stake in our collective odyssey. I thank you all, and peace be upon you. And I bid you successful proceedings.
شكرا معالي.
Thank you, Minister, President of the Executive Council of the African Union, for this statement.
To move to the arrangement of the family photo, while calling the rest of the respective delegates to remain in their seats to ensure the smooth organization of the family photo, allow me this time to call honorable heads of delegations in a staggered manner to proceed to the photo session location to avoid overcrowding. Allow me first to call distinguished ministers and heads of delegations from Liberia, Libya, Madagascar, and Malawi. Please follow our protocol team to the family photo session. This direction. There is only one gate going to the family session. Distinguished ministers and heads of delegations from Cape Verde, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Comoros, Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, Democratic Republic of Congo, Djibouti, Egypt, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Swatini, The Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Kenya, and Lesotho. Please follow our protocol team to the family photo. The gate is behind here, this direction, please. Distinguished ministers and heads of states and heads of delegations from Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Africa, South Sudan, Tanzania, African Union commissioners, please kindly follow our protocol team to the photo session location. Please. This direction. And then allow me now to invite the high podium to the family photo. Distinguished African Union Commission Chairperson, Minister of Foreign Affairs, African Cooperation and Mauritania Abroad, and Chairperson of the African Union Executive Council, Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Your Excellency, Under Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission to Africa, and Your Excellency, African Union Commission Deputy Chairperson, please allow me to take you to the family photo session location. Thank you. You go, come.
We begin here in the capital, and Kenya's candidate for the position of African Union Commission Chairman, Raila Odinga, is exuding cautious optimism of a victory in the much anticipated vote this Saturday in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Odinga is leaving the outcome to fate amid fierce competition from two other candidates. Odinga was speaking at a prayer service organized by the Orange Democratic Movement ahead of the vote. David Mothoka starts us off.
With just 4 days left until 48 African heads of state convene in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to choose the next chairperson of the African Union Commission, the ODM Women Chapter organized an interdenominational prayer service for Kenya's candidate Raila Odinga. Raila, who was accompanied by his family, declaring that he is prepared for either outcome, having traversed the continent in recent months to popularize his bid to heads of state.
Nimeongea na viongozi wote wa bara la Afrika. Wakikubali, nitakuwa mwenyekiti wa chama cha baraza kuu la African Union. So wakakubali, kura itapigwa Jumamosi hii ambayo inakuja. Sio? Mimi naenda. Si mimi naenda. Nikichaguliwa sawa. Nisipochaguliwa sawa. Sivyo? Si mimi niko na imani kwetu.
Odinga says he is confident of a win against Djibouti's Mahmoud Ali Yusuf and Madagascar's Richard Randiamandrato to become the first Kenyan to sit at the helm of the African Union Commission.
Mimi nina hakika tutakienda pale kwa kiongozi ya Mwenyezi Mungu tutafaulu. Tukishinda tumefaulu. Tukishindwa tumefaulu. Sawa sawa. ODM.
Leaders present at the service were also optimistic of a Kenyan moment, while calling on their supporters to prepare for Thanksgiving ceremony in anticipation of victory in the vote.
Mungu amsaidie apate hiyo kiti.
At Sound Candid Talk, we help your event, trainings, shows, and so more to the world through internet broadcasting in UHD. We provide from Sound Candid Talk Live News.